join. To those of you who are live and to those of you who are listening to the recorded session, I just wanted to welcome you to the F12 webcast, where we bring interesting discussions and thought leaders together to explore topics that we feel are of value to business leaders, IT leaders, our own employees, and the larger solutions provider network that we're privileged to be a part of. Today, we're going to talk about cybersecurity as a core differentiator. I'm your host, Devon Gillard. I'm the CMO at F12, but I am not the thought leader. I have brought together a couple of other experts, Calvin's rolling his eyes, to explore a topic that I think is going to be a lot of fun. So before I introduce the guests, I want to set the stage a little bit about what we want to talk about. Cybersecurity is usually talked about as a risk mitigator. And that's important. No one wants to have their money stolen, their business shut down, their data ransomed, to have to answer to their customers, their employees, their investors as to why an incident happened. So risk mitigation is a significant part of cybersecurity. But frankly, that's talked about a lot. This is Cybersecurity Awareness Month here in October, and the risks associated with cybersecurity get a lot of play. We want to turn the narrative on its head and explore cybersecurity as a differentiator, how it can be a revenue generator, a market mover for organizations, for individuals, and actually even for us as a community Canada-wide, how we can be a global cybersecurity differentiator and how that can add value to us. If you're joining us live and you have any questions or comments during the course of our conversation, I want to encourage you to use the question and answer feature at the side you'll see of the AirMeet platform that we're on. Go ahead and ask your questions. We'll fit them in and answer them if we can, if time allows. We're going to try to keep this tight, light, and fast moving. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our guests. Ulrike Bahr-Gedalia joins us from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Ulrike, you're the Senior Director of Technology, Economy, Technology, and Innovation for the Chamber. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Just do a little sound check. Are you okay? Are you hearing us okay?
Oh, my thank you wasn't loud enough. Thank you so much, Devon, for introducing me. All good on my end, yes.
Sounds like I was fishing, but I wasn't. I was just making sure we're all good here. We're also joined by Calvin Engen, who's our CTO of F12.net, holds a CISSP engagement. These two individuals have been working together for some time now on an initiative that the Chamber of Commerce of Canada, a great initiative called Cyber Right Now. So that's the first topic I wanted to explore. Ulrike has asked you a little bit about Cyber Right Now. What is it? And why is the Chamber, investing in this initiative?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Great question. And as everything is about opportunities today and putting a little bit of a positive angle on cyber and turning cyber on its head, Cyber Right Now is actually exactly that, an opportunity. So an opportunity to showcase that Canada can be a global cybersecurity leader and can be one of the most cybersecure countries on this planet. So we incepted this opportunity back was June 2021. And of course, it took a little bit of time in terms of structuring and strategizing this project. But what we've done, and I come from a background before in tech and brought it as well to the Canadian Chamber, was looking across the country and finding out through research that we have 340 plus Canadian cyber companies. We're not even aware of all of them. They're under the radar doing amazing work. So we said, why don't we put together a group of people from across the country of all kinds of sizes and sectors and let them join us. So we did start off with 30 companies, of which 24 were actually new to the Canadian Chamber. So they were as well introduced to new programs and opportunities, and we were introduced to them. So overall, what we then quickly realized, and that's the opportunity here as well, that how do we fare internationally, and is there opportunity to improve upon? I see that as a great positive. Cybersecurity is a great business and great for business. So where are the areas that we need to work on a little more? And in a nutshell, this campaign in particular is focused on working with federal government and industry stakeholders jointly in order to advance the cyber policy agenda, investment agenda for Canada to be a more stable, safe economy and nation, and again, to lead by example globally. And I think with fantastic members such as also Calvin and your organization, we're getting there jointly. And we're in our second year and look forward to the third year, as this is an ongoing conversation.
Appreciate that. I mean, this is a really interesting concept to try to, if you don't mind me to put a marketing spin on it, to brand F12 as a cybersecurity leader, that we have these capabilities in companies we can bring together, and that people could choose to do business with Canadian firms for this reason. Much like, German steel or Italian fashion, or nations get to have their own brand, and that drives business. And there's an opportunity, I would say, globally for someone to seize it, particularly because there's other nation states that are bad actors. But anyway, that's kind of the marketing view. But Calvin, I wanted to pivot to you because F12 is, as a member of this initiative, and I know you personally have been involved in various activities. Tell us a little bit about why F12 is involved in cyber right now. Why would we provide time and attention into this initiative?
Yeah, thank you, Devon. The big thing that, when we were looking at, the industry, the supply chain as a whole, I knew that we needed to be part of something that would provide perspective and visibility back to the government on, what is happening in small to medium enterprises across Canada. As we represent, part of the supply chain in IT and providing security services and IT availability, the problem is not getting better in some cases. And so what we wanted to have is an avenue to be able to advocate for change, to better protect small to medium enterprises across Canada, and really just share what's happening on the ground level. And I think, being able to be part of the Cyber Right Now initiative, one, we get to partner with other industry partners that have the same vision, the same view to help protect the Canadian economy. And so, the hope is that as we go through this process, we've already made changes as we've been able to meet with politicians and MPs and really share what's happening and what needs to change in Canada to be at not behind all our G7 partners. And so I think about how do we elevate our national security posture and create a safe and secure economy. We're seeing money that's leaving our country and not in the right way. It's leaving our country through the electronics funds fraud, ransomware, or even social engineering of intellectual property. And so we have holes in the boat, and we have to plug those holes so that we can have a stronger, more prosperous economy. And so the Cyber Right Now is a ability for us to help enact change and have a better, stronger economy as a whole.
And I want to let the audience know we're talking right now about sort of Canada globally, and we're going to narrow down as the conversation goes on. Some who are joining us are involved in a competitive international marketplace. Some are more local. We're going to have, I think, relevant content here for all audiences. So just bear with us, though, as we kind of explore the global context first, because I think, Calvin, you just set off about, kind of started off about, the opportunity for Canada to be a leader. But what you just said is there's some work for us to catch up to what we're seeing just amongst peer nations, if we could be so immodest as to call ourselves peer nations with our G7 counterparts. So, Ulrike, maybe I'll ask you, where do you see Canada sitting right now relative to our peers?
Well, compared to some of the G7 peers, we've done actually some in-depth research because we wanted to ensure when we hand our asks to the federal government that everything is well-founded in terms of the numbers that we're asking for, the $1 billion or by now $2 billion, which is seems to be a big ask. However, it is actually 50% of quite a few of our G7 peers. We looked at France and the UK. Of course, the US, and also we looked a little more deeply at Germany and so forth. So We have a great opportunity again here through greater investment, and Calvin mentioned the SME sector, to ensure that's 98% of Canadian businesses. So I always say small business is big business in Canada. For them to be better educated, secured, have the tools and technologies in place, and the talent. There's, of course, as well a big talent element where we would like to see as well more investment. It's a global challenge, we're fully aware, but through diversification in the talent pipeline as well, which I believe has to start also much earlier than the workforce. We should start at home and then through the school system and post-secondary and so forth. These are all the buckets and opportunities that we as a group see as, again, opportunities here and growth potential. And this is how we fare globally. So we are a little behind, to put it modestly, but we want to always keep a positive mindset, a bold outlook. And perhaps one other item that I'd like to add is in terms of culture, to be a little bit less risk averse, a little bit more assertive, and boldly celebrate and embrace opportunities and successes. You mentioned Germany with steel, and another country. A lot of nations proudly talk about, or Germany engineering, their successes. Yep. We in Canada should really follow suit and be proud and celebrate our achievements, our companies, our technologies and investments. So that's another cultural comparison where I think we could try and be a little bit more, like I said, bold.
And my sense is from talking to individuals internationally, especially, that there's still a perception that Canada is a good actor. I mean, we've got a good name to start out with. And I'm thinking in particular, I was talking to a firm that does a lot of work down in the Caribbean and kind of that Latin America world where there's a concern globally about various nations and the degree to which they respect the sovereignty of the data of other nations and other companies and other nations. And by the way, this is not just a concern about Russia and China. There's other members of the G7 that cause companies and businesses concern. And therefore, what was fascinating to me was the willingness of these organizations to partner and do business with Canadian firms because we have a reputation as being fair players. Our nation, our government has a reputation, I don't know if it's deserved, of being a fair player in terms of respecting data sovereignty of outside companies, et cetera. And so I think there's an opportunity here for us to be a global leader. Calvin, maybe I'll just spin it over to you. What do you think? And again, we're still kind of at that nation side as before we get into competitive opportunities within our own more local marketplaces. What do you hope to see play out? What do you hope to see with the initiative that we have cyber right now, but also what's available, within the Canadian context? What do you hope to see play out?
Yeah. So if I were to think of like ideal state, on the global stage, we are the number one thought leader around cybersecurity. We're, instead of us as a country reusing or leveraging a lot of our partners, that we're leading the charge around cybersecurity and having a secure supply chain. And we have work to do there, for sure. But what I think is it's absolutely possible. And it's something that we need to do this through upskilling our workforce. A lot of people always say that we have a skill shortage around cybersecurity. And I'd argue that it's not a skill shortage, it's actually an experience issue. There's many.
What do you mean by that? That's really interesting.
Well, where the challenge is that there's a lot of people that are interested in cybersecurity. And we just need to upskill them, give them the experience. And so there's many initiatives going into upskilling the workforce. Some great initiatives that have come out of cyber right now to be able to get people going through these programs to allow them to now have that experience to come into the workforce and help secure Canada. Now the challenge is we're behind. We should have started years ago. And often because there's so many so much job openings available for cybersecurity positions, it's very easy for them to get drafted up into many companies or countries around the world. So it's a lucrative market right now.
In fact, I once heard from one of the leading universities in Canada that has cybersecurity expertise that 2/3 of their graduates are already earmarked for U.S. firms, like I think in their second year. Like they're already got jobs when they graduate. They're leaving the country. Terrible.
Yeah, and so we need to there's a imperative that we must take about taking the skill set of individuals and keeping it within Canada. And so that is something that we absolutely need to do. But part of that is making sure that companies within Canada are aware that we need that. And I think this is part of the education that we have to spend the time on, is informing small to medium businesses that you need this. It is a requirement, and not have to go through the pain of realizing a breach or another event that then makes the decision. We can be proactive with this, and I think that's what's important.
Yeah, sorry for talking over there. I was just thinking as you were speaking about that ultimately Germany didn't get a reputation of great engineering and excellent steel by accident. They created great engineering and great steel, and Italy didn't get a reputation for fashion by accident. They became centers of excellence around fashion and set the marker for it. So there's no shortcut to excellence. You just have to be excellent. And I want to make sure the context here is this opportunity, this national opportunity extends beyond just technology companies. Obviously, there's a lot of software as a service business in Canada. It's growing. Mm-hmm. We're really fortunate to support some of those organizations that are in software as a service. And there's if they can tag along to a great brand of Canada, of cybersecurity excellence, people are doing business with them because they're Canadian. That's obvious. But with the onshoring we're seeing nationally and partner shoring of manufacturing, of other services, I think there's an opportunity here that's broader than just the technology space to have the cybersecurity excellence. I want to pivot, Ulrike, back to you, if you don't mind, about what do you see as, how would you frame our national opportunity around cybersecurity?
Well, actually, I will continue with your end point there and then move to that topic because cybersecurity, as many technologies, for example, AI, they are multi-sectoral. And I think this is such an important point. This is actually where the opportunity lies as well. If you start again with the education system that you mentioned earlier, anyone doing a degree in cybersecurity, for example, I always said it shouldn't really reside in the faculty of computer science. It should really be across multiple departments, and maybe the business unit together with the faculties should do this jointly. Because the minute you enter the workforce and you work for a company, here's again talk about opportunities and national opportunity. Regardless the department you work in and role you have, the minute your fingers hit the keyboard, it's really often down to human error, and technology can only do so much. The end user is often the problem. So we need to be educated and very inclusive across departments from an educational perspective, and then also in terms of work. So the more the finance person, marketing, business development is also aware, it can't be all up to the IT department. And often we have one IT person or nobody when we talk about smaller businesses, right? So I think it should be an inclusive part of education prior to entering the workforce. Again, talk about what's the national opportunity here for Canada. And then when you're in the workforce, to ensure we all have in our organizations good cyber hygiene, very regular cyber training, a good cyber posture, and we all lead by example as an employee, as an individual, as a citizen, and then as an organization across not only all departments, also the C-level, I say, to the janitor. We all need to do it jointly and together. Otherwise, I don't see any opportunity, because in silos, this won't work. Yeah, please. You wanted to ask something else.
I just thought that was really insightful. So I was pondering it because, maybe that is the mistake we often take, is look at it from a technology standpoint, when it's a C-suite responsibility, it's a board responsibility, and increasingly it's a sales responsibility. It occurs to me that throughout the history of market movements, there was these turning points, these breakwater events, when all of a sudden the market would demand. Safety was one of them. You needed, it wasn't much talked about, and then suddenly it's a part of RFPs in certain industries. ESG all of a sudden became, if you wanted to attract and retain investors, if you wanted to attract and retain customers in certain industries, you need to have ESG, and you need to have not just a fake one, but a living ESG practice. And cybersecurity seems to be at various industries at this tipping point, because we're hearing about it more and more. From the sales and marketing side, where organizations are approaching us because they can't sell anymore if they don't, reach certain thresholds, or they're losing opportunities. So I kind of wanted to go to Calvin then with this next question, which is about the supply chain. Ultimately, we all consume services and products from others, and regardless of what industry you're in. What is the state of cybersecurity in the supply chain? What furthermore is the opportunity for all of us who contribute toward the supply chain in whatever manner that might be?
So the supply chain from a cybersecurity perspective is constantly under attack, and that can be under attack from nation state actors like we made mention of earlier, down to competitors trying to disrupt or influence companies, or just down to individuals that are trying to extract money. And so the challenge, I think, when you think about the supply chain, is sometimes companies don't think they're that I almost don't want to say worthy, but like I guess the word I'm searching for would be that they're not as an important aspect. Like they won't be a target.
Oh, because
And I
they're
think
not the largest player, or they're not big and famous.
exactly.
I see. Yeah.
And so when you think about like critical supply chain, of course we think about energy, we think of air transportation
Sure.
and
Yeah.
telecommunications, and these are very large critical aspects of our country. But it's often those ones will make the headlines often, right? But the challenge is what we are seeing is that the smaller businesses that maybe are secondary or tertiary suppliers to the overall supply chain are often the weakest link. And so what we're seeing is more and more reports of organizations being breached, and so that's on the rise. And what most
So
organizations are saying is that that's very low in terms of the reporting amount. So it's actually far bigger than we actually think. And so when you kind of think about all of those elements, why? Why is it happening? Well, this is the imperative. The imperative is we're not providing the adequate security controls or the ability to measure risk within organizations to put into play what's required. What are the fundamental security baseline controls that every organization should have? And this is what's missing. Now, we're doing some great things. Canada, during the pandemic, came out with the Cybersecure Canada initiative, which is designed for 500 employee companies and less to have those basic controls in place. And these are common sense things. Like, let me be clear. It's like do patching, have multi-factor authentication, um, and while those are common sense items from an IT perspective, they're not common practice. And that is often the weakest link in these companies, and which make them very ripe to be attacked and breached. And as a result, we're seeing the cost of organizations and the innovation that they could be spending within their organization being sucked out of them.
hmm.
Being that it's electronic funds fraud, it's social engineering, and it's kind of like a death by a thousand cuts. Because I think most organizations might be able to get away with a couple $1,000s worth of gift cards, maybe leaving the organization. Electronic funds fraud of $100,000, $200,000, maybe a business can survive that. But I think the result is that where would they spend that money if they had it back in the business? Would they,
A sort of opportunity cost, yeah.
yeah, would they, do some additional investment in products and services, hire more staff? And so that is the real risk that I see to the Canadian economy, is that if we don't take that step, and we're starting to, which is really good to see. And I think that's the opportunity. That's the opportunity to secure the supply chain, provide the education, and rise all businesses to a level of care and standard that we all have to do.
So that the whole community is safer. I want to pick at that a little bit, because I think conceptually it's pretty easy to understand people don't want their money stolen. They don't want their data stolen. They don't want their systems breached.
Mhm.
Ulrike, what about the larger supply chain? How much should businesses care about their suppliers of goods and services and their cyber maturity? And why are we seeing more scrutiny happening about the supply chain up and down, and the cyber readiness or posture, if you will, of those organizations?
Well, supply chain, as Calvin mentioned, number one, there are so many players involved. And often when you work also with third parties, you can't really often control and oversee what's happening, which I think is the overall challenge. So if you as one entity in the entire process have very good cyber hygiene and care, and you mentioned also protocols in place, which I think cyber secure, which you mentioned, the 13, I think, protocols. So maybe there are more by now. It's really the cyber essentials, but others don't. I think the control, I mean, it's just very challenging from in particular, global perspective, as supply chains are really of global nature once again, to influence or to control it, basically. So I think large or small, I would like to think that everyone should be equally concerned. It's more the capacity in terms of finances and resources, how much you can put into that process to try to make it as secure and smooth as you possibly can. But other than that, I don't have any specific data on larger corporations, how they would actually envision or handle it better than smaller ones. Often I really, there might be sometimes the perception that large corporations do large things, but small often get it also right on a small scale, and we can all learn from each other. And this is, again, even going back to the Cyber Right Now initiative, the beauty of small and large corporations or organizations coming together and being able to recommend solutions to one another. Maybe Calvin has more insight on the supply chain.
Well,
Yeah,
I'll go to Calvin right now, if you don't mind. Just same question, so I won't repeat it, Calvin. Because I feel like you got some thoughts on this.
yeah. I think this is the challenge that we see is, when you think about, where are you getting your goods and services from your vendors? And you look at that and say, okay, I have this vendor, and they supply me with whatever that might be, a service, a product that you maybe then integrate into your own products and services and sell it to the market. And I think, a vendor risk management framework is so vital to ensure that you're asking the right questions of your vendor, and not just doing that from a degree of like, where do you get the products from, to ensure that those products maybe are not coming from, a company that you wouldn't want to do business with. But I think the imperative then becomes is, how do you ensure that you have a secure supply chain? Well, you have to ask, and you have to start making decisions on who you're allowing to come into your business by validating that they're doing the right things. And so I think this is where most organizations are not doing this just yet. There's definitely examples of them in larger organizations that ensure that their suppliers are secure, but do they have actually, a cybersecure policy? Do they do
Yeah.
those types of things in their organization? And do you validate it? Not just, yes, we do that, is actually having the advisor come in and validate that, and to make a decision to say, do we conduct business with that entity or not? And I think that is the thing that we have to really think of. It's not just about securing your own business. It's actually ensuring that the vendors that you're working with are also secure. Because if they get breached, you might be breached by proxy. and then that becomes a cascading effect in the supply
or be
chain.
interrupted because the supply or service product is not available.
100%.
I'm gonna steal. So, by the way, to the audience, next month we're gonna have two of the world's leading thinkers of cybersecurity. That their job is to be at the forefront of seeing it. They're gonna give us their predictions for 2023. But I'm gonna steal one of them. You're talking about, Calvin and Ulrike, you're both talking about the need for the organizations that we interface with, to scrutinize them and make sure that we're safe and they're safe, and it cascades. And what I'm seeing, we support 700 organizations or so. We got a pretty good sample size. 2023 is, this is a prediction, is the year when this all happens. When I'm scrutinizing you, so you're scrutinizing me, and all of a sudden the dam breaks in cybersecurity competency across the supply chain, which involves all of us, suddenly becomes the thing that has to happen. I've been waiting for government to regulate it, and I think that's wrong. I think it's just going to happen. And the reason why I say that is it used to be, we love it when our clients say, hey, we've got, somebody's asking us about our cybersecurity. Can you help us answer these questions? We used to see that from private equity all the time, from insurance providers, from financial institutions that we help support. But we're seeing it across the board now. People are being asked by investors and customers that they supply services and goods to, or that they're getting funds from. What are your standards? What are your expectations? They can't even get insured anymore. So anyway, I'm on my soapbox here. I really think that this is the year where this is going to happen. If it hasn't already happened to your industry, it's going to happen right away. And there's an opportunity now for you to be at the forefront, to make the investments, like we talked about, Cybersecure Canada, 13 controls, so that your organization can be, to answer, yes, yeah, we've got you covered. Ergo, you win or keep the business. So I think there's a great opportunity there. Anyway, let me get back to talking about it. Ulrike, you've got, you and I have had a chance to have a few discussions. We worked on some articles together, things along those lines. So I've gotten to know that you've got a really, if the accent didn't tell everybody, you've got an international perspective. You spent, I think, decades with technology companies with an international perspective. So what have you witnessed with respect to diversity, inclusion, education, talent? Like, where are workforces at, and where are organizations at internationally? I guess what I'm asking is, we talked about the supply chain. Where are we at in Canada? Relative to what you're seeing, what do business leaders that are listening right now have to think about if they want to position their organization amongst the best in breed for this opportunity that we were just articulating?
Well, thank you for this question. It's it has been quite a few years in different countries for certain amounts of time, and whether for studying or working. And I actually mainly worked also for global organizations, which makes it even more colorful. And I do think often, and I mentioned it before, it really comes back to or down to education as well. If I look at different countries and the education system, and we talked about the talent, not skills gap, sometimes shortage, but Calvin, you said it needs to be also more stimulated or embraced or inspired. In a lot of countries, it is a little more inclusive in terms of, it doesn't matter where you come from or where you go to. If you're interested in tech, let's say there is sometimes a gender divide or perception in some countries, and cultures, even corporate culture, that doesn't exist in other countries. Or there is an expectation that you actually have to have certain courses and degrees in order to go a little further. One example, yes, I immigrated from Israel, but there, by nature, women and men both go to the military, but also there actually enjoyed the diversity of so many different leaders in different roles from different backgrounds and countries. I think that multiculturalism that exists in a lot of other nations, and Canada is a multicultural country. But sometimes we might be hesitant to saying, immigration, it comes down to visa and paperwork and experience in other countries. So being an immigrant to Canada, so what I learned is I came as a senior executive, but the challenge was I wasn't having Canadian experience. And I think it's a mindset. You don't need to have Canadian experience to work in the Canadian sector of any kind. I mean, certain experiences or professions do need for sure degrees and certifications. That's of importance, but you can really start at the level where you finished off in another country. So I did learn what is important is to be inclusive of, for example, intel, of whether you're a journalist, philosopher, IT person, or biologist. When that all comes together, that really creates the most beautiful, I must say, and high impact solutions. And I think just to open your mind, and I think that op-ed you referred to, we talked a bit about the cultural issue as well that Canada sometimes faces, to be simply a little bit more courageous perhaps and open to accepting the other and the otherness. It doesn't make it strange or weird. It's just different and might be different good. And that's why cybersecurity as a core differentiator, it's a good differentiator. So different talent and education systems can be good and advantageous. So that's really the experience I would like to bring here to the table, and we can learn from it and implement it. And
it's a really positive view, because as much as America's vacuuming up our talent around cybersecurity, there's international talent that is very eager to come to Canada and help contribute to our differentiation and our success in organizations if we're open to it. So that's a, and some of them would maybe like to go to America but can't. We also have that advantage of having some more opportunities for talent internationally. So Calvin, kind of bringing it down now to organizations, right? So I'm a business leader of an organization. I'm not a 500-person company, let's say, and I'm not going to have a huge budget for cybersecurity, but I want to win the opportunities that are coming where they're going to scrutinize my cybersecurity. I often hear, I don't want to spend too much. I don't want to be best in breed, but I also don't want to. I want to look competent. So that's a long way of me setting up this question. What should organizations do to stand out amongst their peers with regard to cybersecurity? Where should they start?
I think it needs to start with leadership. And what I mean by that is, if the leader of the organization or the board makes that a priority across the organization, that trickles down. And so knowing that, okay, we're going to make cybersecurity different so that we stand out because we've done these types of things. And so there's a way to do that. You can go through the Cybersecure Canada. You get a badge. You can make that marketable. You can stand head and shoulders above your competitors with something that says, no, we take it very seriously, and we've implemented these controls to ensure that when you work with us, you're working with a cybersecure partner, and so there's a spin that you can put on it. But I think when you talk about where do you spend the dollar, right? If you have a dollar to spend, where do you spend it? You don't need to go down and there's all kinds of cybersecurity companies out there that are vying to have the dollar spent with them. And I think, I mean, like, there's thousands. And what's going to provide the most value back to an organization? And often we get romanced, I would say, by the fact that there's the artificial intelligence and the machine learning and the new, WYSIWYG gadget that you could put on and help secure yourself. And the reality is that cybersecurity starts with policy. It at its fundamental form. It starts with, making your people aware. It starts with, the awareness, security awareness of your staff, because often people are the weakest link. And those are very obtainable items to ensure that you're protecting the organization through your employees. I often say is, like, you don't have to get any AI or machine learning if you still are like a local administrator on your machine. Like, I know that's a basic form, but I mean, if you do that, you're exposing yourself to a lot more risk than your organization needs to. And so we got to focus on kind of like the bottom 90% of all the attack vectors that occur. Do that first. And so how does an organization do that, right? You need to know where your risk is. And so you need to measure it. And that's the fundamental thing that organizations need, is to know what is their cybersecurity posture, where are my gaps, and how do I make a determination based on that risk where to spend that dollar. And so find a trusted advisor. We spend our time and our days doing just that, ensuring that we can help organizations figure out where their security posture is, and then help elevate it. Cybersecurity is a journey. It's not a destination. It is something that's continually evolving and is dynamic in nature. And so you can't buy one thing and be done. It is something that has to continually evolve with your organization.
Just thinking that sadly, cybersecurity is much like fast food, that when I go and order and supersize my Big Mac meal, I'm not making it better by getting a Diet Coke. Like that, it's not the one thing. Like, oh boy, we can be sloppy in our policies, but boy, if we buy this technology, it's diet. We're going to be safe.
Yeah.
It's a whole it's sobering. It's always hard work. It's always always something. Like, hey, listen, we've now explored a little bit about what we argue is the opportunity for organizations to win, to differentiate themselves in the marketplace, for us to do it as a nation. I want to keep it pie in the sky here, Ulrike, for a second. Explore the art of the possible. What do you see is available? What's the opportunity for Canadian businesses to seize here?
Well, I think it goes back to how we started the entire conversation. Canada can be a global leader in cybersecurity. It's a fact. Like Calvin said, we can be and should aim for number one. It's even when sometimes I see comparisons globally, and one says, "Oh, we're number 10 out of so many, or 3. Oh, that's great. It's good enough." Well, I'm not only referring to Canada, other nations say it too, and we're the happiest country in the world. This is great, or we are number 4 here and there. Number one, it depends also how the surveys or statistics come together. But if you look at it and you set yourself that goal and you have that positive attitude, you can actually get there. But you can't get there alone. And this is, again, I always say no one is successful alone. It's about collaboration, partnership. It's about information sharing, but in a very transparent manner and in a timely manner. And again, this comes back to the campaign as well, Cyber Right Now, because we collaborate all the time. You need to, whether with government, other industry or business associations, maybe chambers, organizations abroad, to learn from them and see how we can implement it here. So how do we get there is, number one, the attitude that we can do it. So that's already a good start. And then the next step, through conversations, collaboration, but then we need to implement. Often I say we have all these great roundtables and meetings, and the conversations are beautiful and inspiring. And I said, what now? Now we need actions. We need to implement. And I think Calvin mentioned it in a different context. Now we need to also measure or report and see where we are, right? As you mentioned also that it's cybersecurity is an ongoing, it's just a lifelong process. And here too, but see, report and record and see, how did we measure? We expected A, but the result was B, only 10%, or are we at 50%? And then move on from there. So I think, and on a bigger scale, I should mention that Pie in the Sky, the Canadian Chamber, together with Cyber Right Now, hopes that our 6 asks in the pre-budget submission will be embraced. It's our second round. The initial one were 3 asks, now it's 6. But they're all there for a reason, because Canada can be number one. And this is what I like to believe. So, and I don't think it's just a dream, it's really a possibility.
I absolutely love that positive. It's there for us. We can start in our own backyard by securing and bending. I know I can speak for Calvin and what you brought into our organization. If I have a new marketing platform, I want to, maybe it's a software as a service solution that I want to bring into F12. I'm validating for what it's going to do to help drive our business, streamline our operations. But I can't sign up until it's gone through a vendor validation process now, where the SecOps teams has a look and make sure that we're not going to be exposed by that. That's digital, and that needs to happen. I'm going to, because we're getting to the time where we should open it up for questions. So I'm going to encourage anybody who might have any questions. But as a last thought, Ulrike, could you share with us any resources that may be available for the businesses that are joining us that the Chamber offers?
Well, that would probably also go most likely through cyber right now. So resources in terms of thought leadership, we've done a lot of op-eds, webinars as well, and conversations on cybersecurity matters, starting with really good tips and tools in terms of how to be cyber secure and cyber aware. And like I said, this is an ongoing, this is pretty much led actually by the cybersecurity group and Cyber Right Now campaign as well. And even resources such as something as simple as posters, wherever they're located, to say, wow, cybersecurity is important. I should really click on that link and learn more about it, because Canadians, as we say on our recent poster, really need world-class and deserve world-class cybersecurity. Other opportunities the Chamber offers to any size of business are conversations with government or other industry stakeholders to learn from each other, best practices, invite them to their sessions as well. And then the Chamber as well promotes anyone in their membership, for example, who would talk about cybersecurity and make it important, because like F12 and many other companies in our membership have different tools and services and thought leadership pieces to offer. So it's a broad range through various departments and also policy committees, but it is really, I would think, founded and grounded in the Cyber Right Now campaign with its many initiatives. I mean, I have a whole list, and this will take probably another hour. We've done so much. Calvin is aware of it, but we've been incredibly proactive and basically reiterated and amplified constantly. You need to repeat it constantly, how important it is and what it is you need to do.
Well, I just want to, on behalf of F12 and the businesses that we support and advocate for on cybersecurity, thank the Chamber and you for your efforts around this. We're really passionate, and I know Calvin even more than me, about elevating this conversation and getting attention, but it's hard as an organization like F12 to be a voice that's loud enough so that the decision makers of our nation can hear us. But together with the collective power of the Chamber, conversations have been able to happen at the highest levels. We feel so privileged to be at the table and to be able to help the Chamber in the mission to make Canada a better, more prosperous nation through cybersecurity. So thank you, and thank you for your time and joining us. At this junction, I will invite anybody who may have questions for us. I see one has come in. Very, very good. This is a great question. How do I audit my security vendor to ensure they are the best provider of services for our business?
Ooh,
who would like to
I
take
like that one?
So it's one thing to audit your HVAC company, your software as a service provider, like I was mentioning, but what about your security vendor?
Oh, I'll take this one. This one's good.
Okay, Calvin, go ahead.
So, number one, that's a great question, and the reason why it's a great question is because the technology in security is only as good as it is able to defend. And so how do you know when it's not able to defend? There's specific things that you can do in your security practice to validate that the things that you're doing are adequate. One of those items is called a red team exercise. And so a red team exercise is you take basically security professionals that
not communists. That's not the red team?
No.
Okay, all right.
You take security professionals, and they understand the attack techniques that threat actors would use in the real world.
Okay.
And so you use those same techniques to breach your perimeter or assume a breach within your environment to see whether or not your tools, technology, and security professionals are able to defend or even just see what is happening. At F12, we do this on a continual basis. So we're always validating whether or not the security vendors that we have curated and selected actually measure up. And so we bring in third-party security professionals to do just that. And we do that all the time because I know security is dynamic and it absolutely needs to be constantly evolving. And a vendor that was good last month doesn't mean they're going to be good the following month. And so this is just a risk-based approach to ensure that you have the visibility and you can make the right educated decision to ensure that you have the right security vendor at the table.
And there are, by the way, excellent, Calvin, I can correct me if I'm wrong, there's excellent Canadian firms who do these red team exercises. And if you're curious to get in touch with one, contact us and we can put it in there. And I do know, not to go too much into the weeds, that those have exposed that security services from very reputable and famous organizations weren't all that they purported to be, and we had to make changes to secure ourselves and our clients. So that's a really good point. Yeah.
And just because they're number one doesn't mean they're number one at defending. And so there's something to be said around, just because they're the largest doesn't mean they're the best. And so I maybe in another webinar I can talk about what that was, but I know I was lured by just that. And but we did the validation and ensured that we had the right technology, and that was very, very telling. So
very interesting. I've got another question: is how are Canadian businesses retaining security talent if they keep getting swiped? So I think we were talking earlier about the challenge that organizations are seeing about the big pockets in California and whatnot drawing up the talent. So how are Canadian businesses retaining security talent, and is the number of security talent increasing, or are we seeing any trends? So is the problem getting worse or better? How are businesses tackling this, the talent question? Ulrike, do you have a perspective on that? Calvin?
Yeah, I gladly chime in here briefly, and of course, Calvin, please as well. I must say, there isn't an overarching view on this. So it really depends on the business and it depends on the sector. So I'm in conversations with many businesses. And if a business is open, for example, to hiring people remotely or globally, and they can work in any location they want, they might sometimes have a better opportunity in terms of attracting and retaining their talent, because there isn't the additional aspect of a move to the physical location and so forth. So it also, you can tap into a greater talent pool. The other challenge is, of course, for many, as security talent is so hot and such a hot and needed topic for many, and expertise, there's so much competition. There's a lot of poaching or recruitment going on. I don't like the term poaching myself, but I often hear it. And it depends on really the individual and company, what you want out of your role. Some individuals, for example, are big on professional development and owning their own projects, and they might be very willing to compromise on any salary or compensation. They're saying, really, the content, the meaningfulness is what I'm going for. Another, I heard it, I've been down that path for the past 10 years, working with talent in the tech sector. Others want to work for a shiny organization because it looks just fantastic on their resume, and it's cool. I remember I worked a lot with the animation and video gaming sector, and everybody came to me from university and other industries and said, this is so cool. I want to be part of this organization and create these games. So it was the cool factor too. So it's really challenging, I think, to give an overarching view. How do you retain and keep them? At the end of the day, you need to have an open conversation with your employees. It's an open dialogue in terms of seeing, where do they want to be? What are their goals? And then share them openly, also from an employer's perspective. So nobody can be really forced or put onto chains in order to work in any environment. But there are some, I would think, pointers, even work-life balance, flexible hours. I mean, there's so many. Work fully remotely in Canada. It's really almost, I call it a whole laundry list, and it's a challenge for HR to really ensure you meet these expectations and vice versa. So it's not an easy one because it's so complex.
I'm going to actually make it a little harder for Calvin, because he's my friend and colleague. So let's say I'm in a business that's not particularly sexy, and I can't afford to pay top dollar to ensure people that are upwardly motivated don't necessarily move to Google. How can I solve the cybersecurity talent gap? How can I make sure that I'm receiving the services I need?
Yeah, so number one, I wouldn't say any organization, like a small to medium enterprise, needs to have security talent on staff. What I mean by that is, then you're only as good as that one person. And so my suggestion is to partner with someone that specializes in this. So you have a team of people, and you're actually buying outcomes. You're not buying a individual and having to ensure that you measure them, ensure that they're continuing to stay up to date with talent. And so, because you won't likely attract the right talent, that's just going to be how it is. Most security ops professionals want to work with their peers. They want to work with a group of individuals, and so the reality is that this is why we're seeing security operations services being driven and out of a company. So similar to how you would partner with a IT provider to help
Or
you
a
do
law
that,
firm. Most
or a law firm,
organizations can't
accounting
have a
firm.
full-time account. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so that's the reality. Now, how do you ensure that you have the right capabilities and they're doing that? It's about validating that they're providing the adequate services and measuring that. And so, kind of going back to the red team exercise we talked about earlier. So that's where I'd start. Is really driving that narrative towards to businesses. Uh, and then what we're doing is we're seeing that there is a willingness of IT professionals that are wanting to pivot their career, and so it is getting better, in my opinion. It's should be faster, but it is getting better in general. And so we need to upskill our current talent that we have in the workforce, and there's ways to do that in a very quick fashion and provide the products and services that small to medium businesses absolutely need.
I
Can
know.
I add something to it, Devon, quickly?
Please.
Yeah, there is another element. Again, it's also being addressed in our Cyber Right Now campaign, but looking at a more diverse population. I think sometimes we have a little bit of this angle of who is that IT person or a security person and often we look at whom we're used to, who's next to us in the cubicle, whom we see in the media, a lot of role models. And again, it goes to this look at also indigenous communities, again, women. There's so much, BIPOC and so forth. There's a really underrepresentation of many groups that we really need to reach out to more. And if we don't have sometimes these wonderful individuals in our networks connect with organizations across the country who have more connections or access to these kinds of populations. And we'll be amazed how much talent is to be found there. But sometimes we don't seem to be looking in the right places either. And it's maybe because there is an unconscious bias or there is a conscious bias. So
I'd also argue along the same lines. There's an assumption that this is largely a technology challenge. And so we think about technology professionals. But as Calvin said, it's a policy and a governance challenge first. So individuals who have those experiences, maybe they're not directly in security, could be upskilled to apply those skills in terms of managing policy and transfer them to, maybe they're in QC or QA. We can bring talent in. Sorry, Calvin, you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to say this is just literally a pivot in the lens of the perspective. And when you say that, like I mean, like individuals that are leading companies, it is just a small tweak to say, instead of us going out and building whatever we create, what if we just took a security perspective from the word go and craft based on some of those requirements? And if it's a forethought as opposed to an afterthought, we're going to have a better, more secure product or service that's being designed. And you're absolutely right, Devon. This is something that starts with leadership, and there's some great awareness campaigns or even certifications that help managers and leaders get that skill set so they can start with asking those questions and start building from that.
We can build it. That's a great point, because I think there's a great opportunity here. We're just at the end of our time, and I want to thank everybody for joining us. Reminder to everyone, we're going to have this recorded and available online shortly. So if you missed any part and you want to capture it or share it, please do. As well, we're going to write a quick blog for those who prefer not to listen, but would rather quickly scan the information we presented. Gives us an opportunity too to make sure we are presenting what we're saying in the most polished light. So that'll be up on the f12.net blog shortly. Thank you to our guests. Thank you very much for your time and for sharing your perspectives. And thank you to all in attendance. Take care.